There are moments in life when you lose something so precious that it feels like your heart has been carved out of your chest. You sit there, numb, trying to make sense of it all, wondering why something that once felt so certain, so safe, suddenly slipped away. But it's in that stillness, in that hollow space that loss leaves behind, that something sacred begins to happen. You start to see that loss is not the end, it's the awakening. You begin to understand that sometimes God has to take something from you to reveal himself to you. It's not punishment, it's preparation. It's the quiet redirection of your soul back to the one you were too distracted to notice before. When you lose what you thought you couldn't live without, you come face to face with the truth that you were never meant to depend on it in the first place. That job, that relationship, that dream, maybe they were never meant to complete you, only to guide you to a deeper understanding of who sustains you. Loss strips away illusions, it humbles you, it takes away the noise of the world until you can finally hear the whisper of your own soul saying, "This pain has purpose." And though it hurts, though it breaks you, there's something holy about being broken in the presence of God. Because when everything else is gone and all that's left is you and him, that's where real healing begins. In those nights of restlessness, when you replay everything in your mind, the words unsaid, the chances missed, the moments that slipped through your fingers, you might think you're being punished. You might think God has turned away from you, but what if he hasn't turned away? What if he's just trying to turn your heart back toward him? Sometimes the silence after loss isn't absence, it's invitation. An invitation to see what you couldn't before, to depend on what you always ignored, his mercy, his wisdom, his plan. You see, we live in a world that glorifies gain, but we learn through loss. We grow not when we receive, but when we're forced to let go. It's through losing people, dreams, and comfort that we discover a deeper kind of love, one not based on possession, but on presence. And maybe that's the greatest lesson loss gives you. That love was never meant to be held. It was meant to be reflected. That peace isn't found in what you keep, it's found in what you surrender. Every loss carries a message, a hidden mercy disguised as pain. And when you start to see that, when you start to trust that every ending is just a new chapter written by hands wiser than yours, you begin to breathe differently. You stop fighting the flow of life and start embracing it. You start to see that what left you was never meant to stay, and what stayed was never meant to leave. You begin to realize that nothing is ever truly lost in the eyes of God. It's only transformed, redirected, renewed. So, through every tear, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer, know this: you are being shaped. You are being refined into someone stronger, someone softer, someone more aware of him. Through loss, you are not being destroyed, you are being discovered. And maybe the reason you had to lose so much was so you could finally find him. Most people think they're tired because life has become too heavy, too demanding, too exhausting. But the truth is, most of us aren't tired, we're undisciplined. What we call tiredness is often the weight of inconsistency pressing on our spirit. We want results without commitment, growth without sacrifice, peace without discipline. We wake up each day expecting strength to come from comfort, forgetting that strength is only born through structure. When there's no order in your spiritual and emotional life, even the smallest challenge begins to feel like a mountain. But when you live with discipline, even the biggest storm feels like a test you can overcome. Discipline is not about punishment, it's about alignment. It's the ability to choose what is right over what is easy, what is necessary over what is convenient. It's the silent force that connects intention to action. When you say you want to change, but your actions don't match your words, you create an inner conflict that drains you. That's why so many people feel tired, not because they've done too much, but because they've lived too long without focus. You can't keep pouring your energy into distractions and expect peace to follow. Discipline reclaims your energy, it filters your focus. It teaches you that not everything deserves your attention. Not every impulse deserves your reaction. There are days when you'll wake up and feel like doing nothing, That's when discipline steps in as your greatest ally. It tells you you don't need to feel ready, you just need to begin. Discipline doesn't rely on motivation, it builds momentum. And once you build momentum, your life starts to shift. Suddenly, what used to feel impossible starts becoming routine. You stop being controlled by moods and start being guided by principles. You stop asking for signs and start taking steps. You learn that the distance between who you are and who you want to become is measured by how disciplined you are when no one is watching. It's easy to pray for change, but harder to live the change you prayed for. Prayer gives you the strength, but discipline gives you the structure to sustain it. You can't expect spiritual growth without spiritual consistency. You can't ask for clarity while feeding chaos with your habits. Discipline is what transforms belief into reality. It's the proof of faith, the daily act of showing up even when it hurts, even when no one sees, even when progress feels slow. That's where transformation truly happens. When your mind is scattered, your energy follows. When your focus is divided, your strength weakens. Discipline gathers the pieces of your life and aligns them with purpose. It gives you a sense of control, not over outcomes, but over effort. You stop measuring success by how fast things happen and start valuing the peace that comes from persistence. And over time, you realize that discipline isn't about restriction, it's about freedom. Because when you learn to say no to distractions, you start saying yes to what truly matters. So the next time you feel tired, ask yourself, am I really exhausted? Or have I just been undisciplined with my energy, my time, my faith? Because the moment you start living with discipline, everything begins to change. Your mind becomes clearer, your heart becomes lighter, and your soul becomes stronger. You stop merely surviving and start truly living. And that's when you'll understand you were never tired, you were just waiting to be disciplined. Pain has a way of uncovering who we truly are. It strips away everything false, everything superficial, and forces us to confront ourselves. When life hurts, when we face the kind of loss that shakes our very core, it's as if God is holding up a mirror and saying, "This is who you are when everything else is gone." And in that reflection, you begin to see your purpose taking shape, because pain, as cruel as it feels, is often the first language of transformation. It teaches you lessons that comfort never could. But here's the truth, while pain may reveal your purpose, only discipline can sustain it. Inspiration comes in moments, transformation comes through consistency. When you go through hardship, there's a spark inside you, a realization that there's something greater waiting on the other side of your suffering. But that realization alone isn't enough. Without discipline, that spark fades. Without commitment, purpose becomes nothing more than a beautiful idea left unrealized. Pain opens your eyes, but discipline teaches your hands how to build what you've seen. It's easy to have faith when the fire is fresh, when your emotions are stirred and you feel close to change. But what happens when the emotion fades? When days turn into months, and the weight of routine begins to dull your motivation? That's where discipline becomes sacred, because discipline is faith in motion. It's doing the work even when you can't feel the inspiration anymore. Every person who's ever grown through loss has faced this moment, that quiet, lonely place where there are no more tears, no more anger, just the question, what now? It's in that moment that you either stay broken or choose to rebuild. Discipline is what helps you take that first brick and lay it down again. It's the act of waking up every day and saying, I refuse to let my pain define me. Because pain, if left unchecked, turns into paralysis. But when partnered with discipline, pain becomes progress. It becomes a tool that shapes you, not a wound that weakens you. God doesn't waste pain. Every hardship you endure carries a lesson that refines your soul. But you must have the discipline to extract that wisdom, to live by it, to let it mold your choices and strengthen your heart. Pain will show you where you are fragile, but discipline will make you unbreakable. Pain humbles you, discipline empowers you. One gives you awareness, the other gives you endurance. Together, they create transformation that is both spiritual and lasting. When you look at those who have risen after being broken, you'll notice a pattern. Their strength didn't come from luck or timing, it came from discipline. From the daily decision to keep showing up, to keep praying, to keep trusting even when they couldn't see results. They refused to let emotions dictate their direction. They allowed faith to lead and discipline to follow. And that combination creates resilience, the kind that no loss can take away. In every chapter of your healing, discipline is what keeps your heart steady. It reminds you that your pain was not in vain. It teaches you that growth is not found in the absence of struggle, but in the persistence to rise despite it. Pain may introduce you to your purpose, but discipline is what carries you to its fulfillment. So when life breaks you open, don't let that be the end of your story. Let discipline turn your pain into power and your suffering into strength. Because when you refuse to give up, even when it hurts, that's when you finally begin to heal. There comes a moment in every believer's journey when you realize that strength is not about how much you can endure, but how deeply you can surrender. We spend so much of our lives trying to control outcomes, trying to fix, manage, and predict everything that happens to us. We fight so hard to hold things together, only to realize that what we're gripping so tightly is what's keeping us from peace. It's in those moments when you finally loosen your hold, when you finally fall to your knees and whisper, "I can't do this alone," that true strength begins to take root. Because real strength doesn't come from striving. It comes from surrendering to the one who never fails. Through every loss, every unanswered prayer, and every season of uncertainty, you start to see that God was never asking you to be invincible. He was asking you to trust that even when life feels out of control, He is still in control. To trust that what you thought was rejection might actually be redirection. To trust that every delay, every heartbreak, every closed door carries within it a divine purpose you can't yet see. The world teaches us that strength means doing more, achieving more, proving more, but spiritual strength is different. It's quiet, humble, steady. It's choosing faith over fear, patience over panic, surrender over struggle. And when you finally allow yourself to let go, you start to understand that discipline and surrender aren't opposites, they are partners. Discipline gives you the consistency to keep walking, and surrender gives you the peace to trust where you're going. You begin to move through life with a calm assurance, not because everything is easy, but because you know who is guiding you. There's no longer a need to force things to happen. You learn to align yourself with His timing instead of your own. You stop seeing detours as delays and start recognizing them as protection. You begin to realize that what left your life wasn't punishment, it was mercy in disguise. There's a kind of peace that only comes when you stop asking why and start saying thank you. Thank you for the doors that closed. Thank you for the people who walked away. Thank you for the seasons that tested my patience and my faith. Because it's through those very moments that you meet Him most deeply. You start to understand that every loss carried you closer to Him, every hardship strengthened your dependence on Him, and every unanswered prayer redirected your heart toward what was truly meant for you. This is the kind of strength that doesn't boast or shout. It doesn't come from the applause of others or the success of the moment. It's the quiet resilience that comes from knowing that your worth isn't tied to outcomes. It's tied to your relationship with the one who never changes. When you reach that point, fear begins to fade, anxiety loses its grip, you stop chasing control and start embracing trust. You stop striving to carry everything and start resting in the knowledge that you were never meant to carry it alone. And in that sacred stillness, something extraordinary happens. You learn Him. You begin to see His hand in every turn, His wisdom in every delay, His mercy in every loss. You find a peace that doesn't depend on what happens around you, because it's rooted in who walks beside you. And that's when you finally understand. True strength is not in holding on, it's in letting go.